witches! So today I really wanted to introduce you to the world of elementals. In the 16th century, a Swiss physician slash alchemist named Paracelsus, I am so sorry, I keep trying to say Paracelsus because I feel like that sounds right, but it's not. I'll put the spelling down below. But basically, he outlined his concept of who the elemental spirits are. And even though it dates back to that 16th century, so technically it's like a little bit more like modern than when we think about like Norse mythology or Celtic mythology, etc. A lot of people actually work with elemental spirits today. These spirits are kind of seen as an elevated class of fae or fair folk. So I wanted to just kind of touch on all four of them. So firstly, the earth spirits, which is like kind of my favorite element, so we're starting with that one first. They're called gnomes, and their name actually means earth dweller. These spirits dwell underground and are kind of reluctant to interact with humans and are often guarding mines or precious metals. So it's very much like what you think of when you think of a gnome, like it's very much like that is like the earth spirit. I personally, like if you guys remember back in March, I actually bought a tiny representation of a gnome to watch over my plants because it does have that like symbolism of being a being that is tied explicitly to the earth. So I really like that symbology. And if you're not interested in working with deities, but want to kind of open that relationship with like the earth or the elements and need kind of a physical representation or manifestation of it, gnomes and the rest of the manifestations I'm talking about are a really great option. So that's why I'm talking about it today. The air spirits are called sylphs, and they are actually invisible beings made of air itself. So I know that's kind of hard, but if you can imagine beings made of air, I feel like this is really close to like what fairies are, but yeah. They're most like they are the most like humans in description and move through air as freely as you and I do. So whereas the gnomes move freely through the earth as easily as we move through the air, the sylphs actually move through the air super easily. A lot of people see sylphs in like incense smoke, kind of like they see them as that. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like their shape is almost kind of that like very fluid motion in the air. So that's kind of how they are represented on your altar. They can be represented as incense, but there are some people who do like art or statues of sylphs, so that's really cool. Water spirits are called undines, and sometimes they're called nymphs, but generally speaking, these spirits are most represent or are most like what we know as mermaids. So if that like the water element is something that you are very interested in, if you really like mermaids and stuff, maybe look into working with undines. So Hans Christian Andersen actually based The Little Mermaid off of the description of the undines from the 16th century, which is really cool. And if that's something that you're just interested in, or if you work a lot with the water element, a lot more than I do at least, maybe having a representation of that on your altar could be beneficial. I don't know. But anyways, the next and final one that we're going to be talking about, because spirit does not have a specific entity related to them, are the fire spirits, which are called salamanders. And no, I am not talking about the amphibians, but I do kind of want one as a pet, not gonna lie. It is said by some that salamanders are the beings that like actually brought fire to the humans. And generally speaking, they look exactly like how you think, like literal salamanders. Like if you can think of the amphibian, that's like what we're talking about. Salamanders kind of like to live in damp logs. So when those were thrown onto a fire, they would kind of scurry out. So that's where this like legend kind of originated from. So there is like real meaning to it. But this Swiss physician slash alchemist really like took that to be like the personification of the fire element, and a lot of witches use it today. So I wanted to touch on it. If you're looking for ways to personify the elements or work with elemental spirits in your craft, having the like representations of all of these, so having like a salamander or a gnome or etc., like a mermaid statue on your altar is a really great way to start. Let's work with elemental spirits. I would really like to hear more about this. I think it's a very cool part of a witch's craft, especially if you are not interested in deity work so much. But I think that like they kind of have to personify the elements is very cool. So yeah, I would love to hear about it in the comments, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye!